more about best ways on researching places, how to balance between touristy places and having a friend, a local friend, as you put it, being there. Can we talk a little bit about saving money? Because this is on people's minds for sure. From your extensive traveling, what are some of effective ways that you have tried and worked on saving money?
Well, I'm sure this is a topic that lots of people are interested in because, you know, people often think that traveling is expensive, but actually it's not actually as expensive as people think, and you've got to get the mindset that it's actually sometimes cheaper to travel than it is to stay in the same place, because you won't have bills, you won't have regular payments for things because you're constantly on the move. So I think what you've got to bear in mind is that you've got to be a very tight-fisted person in terms of money to start with. You've got to realise that every little penny you're spending is going to influence in some way. Do you need to spend it? Do you need to buy new clothes? Do you need to buy new jeans? You might not need to buy these things because for the same price you could maybe have a week in Taiwan. You know, I've met people and sometimes they're in a mindset where they're not focused on saving money when they travel. So I've just jotted down a few tips that might actually work. So for example, with accommodation, you can share with people, you can stay in hostels, you can do couch surfing, where obviously a lot of people listening will know what couch surfing is. You contact someone and ask them if you can stay on their settee, their sofa or their floor for free, and they will say yes because they're a member of this group. So ways to save on accommodation are those: don't stay in 3 or 4 star hotels. There's not much point unless you're actually meaning to relax, you know, and you're going for that reason. So accommodation you can easily save on, you can share with friends, you can sleep on buses and trains, you can sleep in airports, you can sleep anywhere pretty much, because the most important thing when you travel is the passion for being out there, seeing the world. The sleep actually, believe it or not, is less important. So try and save some money on where you're going to sleep for a start.
How safe is it to sleep on buses though?
If you're in control of your own backpacks and you know that they can be trusted, or if you're in a group, you know, one person can sleep for 4 hours, the other person stays away. You can do it that way. There are many different ways to do it. I mean, if I stay on a train, I've done a few night trains. Like last year I did one. I was in Turkey, I was in Iran, and also I did a night train in Georgia. And on those trains, I had my own compartment, or myself and my girlfriend had our own compartment, so basically no one would come in and take our stuff anyway, so we could sleep on the train. With buses, it can be a bit more tricky, but obviously look after your possessions at all times as well.
Where was that train to?
Well, I took one from Tbilisi to Baku, which is Georgia, into Azerbaijan, and then I did one recently from Moldova to Romania. So yeah, quite a lot of night trains, and you know, you're saving money on accommodation. And you're also getting a cool experience, you know, to get woken up at 1 AM at the border police in a new country and getting your passport stamped. So I can't complain about that, and I think anyone that wants to save money needs to look, you know, outside the box. Look at ways you can save money, or take an early morning flight, or take a late night flight. You know, if you want to fly to Australia, why not fly at 11 PM at night? And in which case, when you land in Australia, you're actually, you know, they've got the time difference anyway if you go from Hong Kong. So you've actually caught up on your sleep while you're in the air. So just different ways of that.
I feel so inspired to book flights now.
Yeah, well, sometimes the cheapest, you know, the cheapest ways are quite simple. And there's another tip with flights. Tuesday flights are always cheaper, as a general rule.
Tuesday flights?
Yeah, as a general rule. You know, try and be a bit more flexible, because obviously most people like to travel on a weekend. So people, like, they finish work on a Friday and they're off work for a week or for 2 days, and Friday night airports are bedlam. It's madness trying to get through customs on a Friday night somewhere. I mean, the China border here up to Hong Kong is a nightmare on a Friday night. So generally I try to avoid the peak times, and when I do that, I notice that the flights are also cheaper. Sometimes the trains are cheaper too, and the buses. So I think if you can be a bit more flexible with your travel, anyone listening wants to travel and wants to have, you know, a bit more flexibility, I think it will save you a bit of money in the long run.
Definitely. I mean, there goes the saying, time is money. If you're able to,
That's right, yeah.
If you want to shave time, you might have to spend some money, but if you've got some time in your hands, then definitely Tuesday flights it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots of different ways. People will come up with all different ways of saving money when they travel. There's other obvious ones. I mean, supermarkets. You know, you can still try the local food in a country by going to a supermarket and cooking it in the hostel, or you can snack on the move. You know, buy something cheap and eat it while you're on a bus, so you've saved time as well. So yeah, many different money tips. I've got some on my website as well. Some Mondays actually do a money saving tips section. So yeah, people can certainly check that out and yeah, hopefully save as much money as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. What about in terms of being creative with your flights? I mean, how often do you do maybe several stopovers before you get to your final destination? I hear that's also a good way to save money as well.
It is it's a very good point because if for example you want to get from like Hong Kong to Bangladesh, for example, you might think that the quickest way is to go directly Hong Kong to Bangladesh, but it turns out that it might be cheaper if you go via Kuala Lumpur or Singapore. So if you've got time on your hands, you can take other flight options that will maybe save you $100, but you've got to spend an extra 5 or 6 hours in an airport. I'd always take the saving the money to have the extra time in the airport, because with me working on my computer, that extra time I can use it to do some work, or I can go and relax, have a coffee, have a beer, something like that. So I think with flights, once you're looking at a destination you want to go to, think outside of the box. What other ways can you get there? You might want to, some people might want to visit Hong Kong. It might be cheaper for them to fly into Shenzhen and then cross the border. So there's all different ways. Don't just look at the obvious answer. If you want to get to Australia, people say, oh, the easiest one is just fly to Sydney or Melbourne. Well, if you go to Kuala Lumpur, you can fly into Kowloon in the Gold Coast, and it's normally a cheaper flight.
Yeah.
So things like that people should be looking out for.
Yeah, Amsterdam is meant to be a good transit destination as well. If you want to get to South America, you can fly from Hong Kong to Amsterdam and then from Amsterdam down to Argentina. I hear that's also a good way to save money as well. I never quite understood why does that help you save. Why is that cheaper? Isn't it more expensive for airlines to fly your baggage to another place and then unload it and then to a different place? I never quite could get my head around this.
I still haven't got my head around that. I don't know how it works. I mean, sometimes you'll get a ridiculous flight being cheaper, and you just can't expect it. And I think the only thing that I could say is probably the airlines are trying to fill the rest of their seats up, maybe.
And free up those direct flights for people.
Yeah, and sometimes they think I'm crazy with the destinations I'm flying to. Like, for example, next month I'm actually flying from Bahrain to Turkey and then on to Copenhagen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's to some people that might be a crazy trip. So I just hope that my bag turns up when I get to the airport in Denmark, because you know what these flight connections are like. So yeah, I think outside the box, and definitely Amsterdam and there's other places in Europe like Frankfurt and Heathrow, London Heathrow. They're obviously great hubs. You can go to New York from places like Paris and Heathrow as well. So it's an easy option.
Okay. Maybe we have smart listeners. If any of the listeners can sort of shed some light on this, why is it, say, if I was going from Hong Kong to Singapore, why is it cheaper for me to fly from Hong Kong to Beijing and then to Singapore? If you have any thoughts, you can get in touch, 123show at rthk.hk, or drop me a message on the Facebook page, Noreen Mayer on RTHK Radio 3. So Johnny, with some of these money saving tips, what about time saving? Sometimes you do want to get from A to B quicker. Do you have any ways any things that you'll do to save time?
Yeah, it can be done. Obviously, I'm quite relaxed with time with my travel, but in the past, of course, I've needed to get from A to B quite quick. And in that situation, you'll have to just probably pay the extra and get the quickest flight. I think there's no way around it. And it's very useful for families and actually for weddings and things. I had to fly back for a mate's wedding, so time wasn't on my side. I needed to be there at a certain time. So obviously I had to get the most direct flight within a time zone. It was actually from Hong Kong to Heathrow to Belfast. So you've got to sometimes look at that when you're planning it.
All right then, Johnny. We'll return to some more interesting travel tips after the 2 o'clock news. Very